kind of changes are we going to see happen in January? Because so many people are so angry right now. They want change and they want it now.
Well, and they're going to get change. You know, the federal government is too big. It spends too much. And, you know, the Tea Party's right about that. And this is not only about spending and about a too big federal government. This is about the Democratic Party saying they're going to raise taxes again in the middle of a recession. And this is a rejection of President Obama and his agenda. I mean, this is a big defeat for President Obama. And it's a message from the American people that they're scared. And I heard that the last 3 or 4 months, people saying, you know, I'm afraid, I'm concerned. And
people you'd never expect to be afraid or concerned. Yeah.
And, well, the GOP getting back the House, but not the Senate likely. We're still watching all that. And, of course, the White House still belongs to the Democratic Party. Could add up to a lot of gridlock. Is that going to be a problem? What's that going to mean for
Well, I think the American people would prefer gridlock over the Democratic Party and really the liberal wing of the Democratic Party, controlling all three and running things through. And really not only running over the House and the Senate, but also the American people and their will. The American people opposed the Obama health care plan by a pretty good margin. They opposed the cap and tax, which would really have had moved gasoline. Some reports by independent economists were $7 a gallon gas. And the response of some of the Democrats, Rick Boucher in Virginia, who's going down to defeat and was considered safe, he said, well, people don't need to get out of their cars. Well, the people in that rural district in Virginia said, Rick, you know, we don't need to get out of our cars.
Interesting. If you now go back up to Washington, your duties most likely are going to change. Tell us about that.
Well, I will be chairman of financial services.
That's pretty impressive. You would be replacing Barney Frank, right?
Well, that's right. Now, and I don't like to say that I'm taking his place, but
you have earned this new place.
I will be the new chairman. But you know, financial services ought to be bipartisan. But you know, the things that the Democrats have done, and I'm not using that as a dirty word. I have friends who are Democrats.
Sure.
But Fannie and Freddie have cost the American people $150 billion, and it's still making non-down payment loans to people with bad credit, with high loan-to-value ratios, and that's a prescription for defeat. I mean, for disaster. And the American people don't want to subsidize those loans. We don't want to have a repeat of what we just had 2 years ago.
So what are you going to do?
Well, we're going to end government subsidized loans. You know, if people have good credit, if they can pay a down payment, they ought to be able to buy a house. Now, if they hadn't proved that they can do that, it's really unfair to put them in a house that they can't afford. All of us, not just on financial services, we're going to cut the size of the federal government. It's really too big for the. It's so big that it's depressing our economy right now, our GDP. Almost every independent study says that it's become too big. And it's actually retarding jobs in the private sector, and that's where jobs are going to have to come from. More government jobs are not the way to prosperity. We're borrowing 42% of the money we spend. We're borrowing 42% of it. I mean, that a private company or family couldn't do that for long.
Now, before the Republican Party can take over the House again, there's going to be a lame duck session.
That's right.
What do you expect to see there?
Well, I think we're going to talk about taxes, and the issue is going to be the Democrats are going to say, well, to balance the budget, we need to have part tax increases and part spending cuts. And I hope we hold the line. We ought to learn our lesson from 4 years ago and 2 years ago.
Would they really try to do something in that little bit of time left, though?
I think that they will try to sell the American people on the fact that we do need to raise taxes. And I think that would be another disastrous step. You know, if government's too big, if a family's spending too much, you don't ask them to spend more. You ask them to tighten their belt.
we'll be watching to see what you get done.
Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you,
so
Pam.
much.
And let me say this. America faces challenges. But one thing you get to do as a congressman, you get to travel to other countries.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, there's no country that has it as good as America. But we got there by individual choice, by competition, and personal responsibility.
We will do that. Thank you so much
Thank you,
for joining us, Congressman.